Beyond the surface of our world, the moon moves at the edge of the unknown. For us, it's the beginning of space. Getting there may have been the greatest effort ever made. Was it worth it? What have we learned? It was a step out into space and back into the distant past. Here, time stood still for 3 billion years until we came to read its record.
Man, you are really bouncing.
The bright face that conquers darkness has always been a focus for our questions. Since we humans first looked out and saw the heavens move, the moon has challenged us with the promise of knowledge. It fills the night sky of our dreams. Marking time, and yet unmarked by it, the moon seems to call the mortal tune we dance to. But when we try to fix that changing face, we find we have carved a likeness of ourselves reflected. Together, the sun and moon control the human day. On this is built a tremendous structure of meaning and myth. The religions of the world enshrine the lunar cycle of change and renewal. From Egyptian Isis, carrying the horned moon on her head, to the Virgin Mary, the moon is Mother of God, the promise of continuity. After death, there will be life. Easter, the central feast of Christian liturgy, is celebrated each year on the first full moon of spring. Its rituals speak of solar fertility and lunar rebirth. The light has come again, as it was in the beginning, now, and forever. In China, dragons still dance for a new year measured out by the moon. Each month has a different lunar feast day, but the harvest moon of the 8th month is the birthday celebration. Candles are lit in honor of her fertile roundness. Buddha's birthday is marked in Sri Lanka on the full moon of spring. Thousands of lights celebrate the moon's renewal, the coming of truth and life among the people of Earth. Islam moves exactly to the moon's changes. Half a billion Muslims worldwide use a strict lunar calendar that ignores the solar year and moves their months out of phase with the seasons. From the beginning, human beings have looked to the moon's cycle to measure time. Waxing and waning against the darkness, it's the promise of a future. But sometimes the whale of darkness swallows up the moon. An eclipse threatens time itself. In our world, artificially lit, it's hard to recapture the fear an eclipse must once have caused. Only a cosmic rage could blot out the moon, a rage that must somehow be appeased. Perhaps the greatest efforts of early human societies were devoted to mastering the moon's movements. Out of knowledge, comes the power of prediction and the conquest of fear. From observatories like the Mayan Temple of the Moon, astronomer priests recorded the moon's path through the sky. Over generations, they measured with extraordinary accuracy the angle of moonrise and moonset. They discovered a larger lunar cycle, repeating once every 18.6 years, into which eclipses fit. 4,000 years ago, megalithic man used great stone laboratories like Stonehenge to make minute lunar measurements and predict eclipses. But understanding the moon's movements has not broken its hold on the human imagination. Throughout history, the lunatic, the lover, and the poet have been assigned to the moon's dominion. Ours is the world beneath the moon, the sphere of change and decay. The moonstruck have taken a multitude of shapes in myth and folklore. Werewolves and witches, madness, suicide, epilepsy, arson, and deformity. These are distorted shadows of the moon's real power to affect all life on Earth. Spinning through space, the Earth and Moon are bound together by the laws of matter. As the moon falls perpetually past our world, it reaches out and tugs our oceans after it. The lunar tide travels round the Earth at 2 kilometers a second, crossing 10,000 kilometers of ocean in half a day. The shoreline breaks its path and it recedes. Coastlines and currents vary the height of local tides. Here at the Bay of Fundy on Canada's east coast, the tides break all the records. A tidal range of up to 16 meters means fishermen can work by horse and cart. The bulge of the tides under the moon is matched by another on the opposite side of the Earth because of centrifugal force. As the Earth revolves daily within the moon's monthly orbit, every point on Earth passes through both those tidal bulges. Higher tides occur twice a month when the sun's gravity is lined up with the new and full moon. Shore-living creatures are tuned to the daily and monthly rhythms of the tides. With the falling tide, fiddler crabs emerge from hiding places to forage on the beaches. Even in the laboratory, their activity levels are timed to their local tides. Their survival depends on it. In California, summer full moons bring thousands of grunion fish to spawn high on the tide line. The eggs hatch 14 days later, washed back to sea by the new moon's higher tide. In tidal waters, the lunar month often acts as a synchronizer. Many shellfish breed punctually at the full moon, perhaps to ensure sufficient numbers for fertilization. It's part of a complex and still mysterious process. All living organisms resonate at the cellular level to some of the physical rhythms of our planet: the day, the seasons, and the tides. Among all these living clocks, the minute coral organism is the champion, building its shell in time with the tides. Growth lines on fossil corals show that the moon's long tidal arm is a lever large enough to move the Earth. 380 million years ago, when this fossil coral laid down its daily growth lines, there were 400 days in the year. The Earth was moving faster then, under a moon that was much closer. Tidal friction has been slowing down the Earth and pushing the moon out into space. Under the water, coral records the movements of great bodies in space and through time. Like the coral clock, the moon has been keeping time in the vast oceans of space. But to read its record, we had to pierce the clouds that mask our world.
Just who is the Disney Channel for anyway? Young kids love it. So do older kids. In the evenings, there's programming for the whole family. And when the kids are off to bed, there are programs just for you. Because the Disney Channel is like getting 3 channels in one. The Disney Channel, America's family network. To subscribe to the Disney Channel, call 1-800-782-3500.
Introducing Toyota Corolla for 1988. Dramatic new looks that'll literally stun you, performance that'll surprise you, and value that is legendary. For 1988, it's a whole new dimension for Corolla. Toyota quality, who could ask for anything more?
What can you give to all your dear friends? Give them the gift that adds a little color to their lives. Every day, USA Today. In 4 concise, colorful sections, USA Today brings your friends up to date on the latest news from every state across the USA. Quick tips and important info for the money-minded. All the latest sports stats. In life, you'll find the hottest trends. And for us cross-country travelers, it sure helps to know the weather out there. So call now and receive 13 weeks of USA Today for only, $29.25. That's a savings of 10% off the regular price. Plus, if you order a USA Today gift subscription now, you'll get a special holiday ornament and a $5 AT&T long-distance gift certificate free. Call now and give the gift that'll make them shout out with glee. USA Today. You'll go down in history.
One scientist in 10,000 wins a Nobel Prize. Most labor daily in painstaking and unrecognized research. They work not for fame or glory, but to make our lives better. Join the Discovery Channel as we explore the contributions of these questers. From the mysteries of nature to the ingenuity behind synthetic materials. Open your mind to the possibilities that inspire the questers. Saturday.
The human zooms. Back and forth they go, trying to take just the pictures they want. Now, Pentax puts an end to the human zoom by inventing the IQ Zoom, the world's only fully automatic camera with a built-in power zoom lens. All you have to move is your thumb, so you can get this, and this. Put an end to the human zoom. Get the Pentax IQ Zoom, voted European Compact Camera of the Year.
A decade of unmanned spaceflight had prepared the way. On July 20th, 1969, human beings landed on the moon.
Down the ladder to the plains of Happy.
8 more manned landings were to follow, but the first steps toward an alien horizon left footprints that will last 1 million years.
But my guess from the old photographs it probably is.
Columbus, Marco Polo, Charles Darwin on the Beagle. All the great explorers carried treasures home with them. The astronauts brought back material that would end decades of scientific speculation.
I think we found what we came for.
The director of geophysical studies for the space program at the time was Dr. David Strangway of the University of Toronto.
We were asking such simple questions as, is it hot or is it cold? We were asking such simple questions as, is it covered with a layer of dust, incredibly thick? We were asking such questions as, if you pick up some of this material that's sitting up there in a vacuum, is it put it into an oxygen atmosphere? Is it going to suddenly explode because it oxidizes so fast? All sorts of questions that were really, in a way, in retrospect, very naive.
Now, more than a decade later, the pristine laboratory in Houston, Texas, defends the lunar samples from us. It's a giant safe, strong against hurricanes, earthquakes, floods, and a deadlier peril, dust. Only in super clean conditions can minute and exhaustive analysis finally establish what the moon is made of. That familiar face is a landscape of white highlands and craters filled with dark volcanic rock. Rock samples from both areas were collected. The crater rock is foamy basalt, like the lava in Hawaii and Iceland. Rock from the highlands is compacted out of many different fragments. Doug Blanchard, curator of the pristine laboratory, describes how some of those rock pieces, or clasts, have been preserved from the very beginning of the moon's history.
The rock itself was probably formed by some impact which ground up some of the rock, and melted the other, compressed it all, and put it back together. Inside the rock there are clasts. That's what these white areas are. They're clasts that have been broken off. What we look for in these rocks are clasts that have been preserved unaltered from the beginning of the history of the moon. Impacts have dug out pieces of the crust and have embedded them in this glassy-like black part of the matrix. So we would look for a clast and put it through chemical tests to determine whether it is in fact unaltered from the time it was formed inside the moon in some of its very earliest history.
Time, as the moon tells it, was long ago and very violent. After forming at the same time as Earth, about 4.6 billion years ago, the moon melted and the heavier elements sank beneath a lighter crust. During the first billion years of its existence, the lunar surface was battered and scarred by massive bombardment of material from space. About 4 billion years ago, as the bombardment tailed off, two enormous asteroids, perhaps 25 kilometers across, dug out the giant basins of the Imbrium and the Oriental. As radioactive elements decayed beneath the crust, the impact craters filled with molten rock, and for 800 million years, the moon was torn and devastated by volcanic activity. Since then, it has been at peace, holding the story of its past for 3 billion years of silence. What we learned on the moon is taking us deep into the solar system. The record etched on this surface is a guidebook for space exploration, a timetable for planetary history. And the record is still being written. The lunar rover moved across a surface open to space, as Earth can never be behind its atmosphere. The boundary line between the moon and space is a layer of rubble and dust called the regolith, in places up to 30 meters thick. A perpetual rain of meteorites and cosmic dust churns and mixes the regolith in a kind of lunar gardening. The regolith contains particles of the sun itself, carried across 150 million kilometers of space by the solar wind.
Man, that is hard.
Core samples drilled out of the lunar soil can tell us about the past and the future of the sun.
It's fragmental-like.
Now and then, bursts of enormous activity flare up from the sun's surface, blasting high-energy particles across the solar system. These flares call into question the long-term stability of the sun. Studies of the fossil record preserved in lunar soil show that there's been very little variation in the sun's activity since the solar system formed.
Okay, now we got the fillet, we got the soil, now we need to sample the rock. Go. Now I'll give you a demonstration here, Joe. Roger, right on. Here it goes.
With such a variety of objects falling on its surface, the moon might be excused for trembling. Seismic probes set up during the Apollo program measured moonquakes for 8 years after the moon landings ended. This record shows that the moon releases less than 1/10,000,000th of the Earth's quake energy. In spite of its reputation, the moon's a very stable place.
3, 2, 1. Ignition. Right away, Houston. Brakes are good. Ag start.
The Lunar Exploration Program has created a new international community of scientists. All over the world, the challenge of the moon rocks has spurred new techniques of analysis, new ways of checking and double-checking results as the samples are taken apart, atom by atom. It's led to discoveries in every way as fundamental as the Galilean revolution. But it's an arduous process.
People often wonder why we aren't done looking at the moon rocks yet and why we're still studying them. We've had them in our laboratories. We've occupied ourselves for 10 years studying the details of these rocks. We haven't understood them all yet because it's an incredible puzzle. We have 840 pounds of rock to identify, to try to study a whole entire planet. That would be quite as if we took 840 pounds of these rocks, which are gathered from here and there, and tried to reconstruct the history of the Earth. So we're very sophisticated with what we can do with a single piece of rock and a tiny piece out of a single piece of rock, but yet we are into an enormous puzzle.
These are the crown jewels of our world, guarded and cataloged with incredible care. In our attempt to understand the universe we live in, here at least we have been able to set aside speculation and move minutely from fact to fact. After billions of years of separation, our moon is marked with human footprints. What comes next?
Maybe this is a bit naive, but I just wonder whether a lunar base is really that much more remote than a mining camp in the Arctic, where you fly a crew in for 10 days and you fly them back to Saskatoon or wherever for 10 days to live at home, and then they go back up into the Arctic. Those are pretty hostile environments they're operating in, and is it so different to be thinking about doing that same kind of thing with respect to a lunar base?
The moon's our future now, our vantage point in space. Can we keep it otherworldly, free from the conflicts that torment us here on Earth? A new measure begins in our dance to lunar time.
Home again, jiggity jig. Boy, Houston, the beauty of this place is just absolutely incredible.
Some people believe that in order to enjoy Euro styling, one must be prepared to sacrifice comfort. But not the people at Spidell. Introducing the Euroflex watch bracelet collection for men and women. European styling with a patented American twist. Euroflex watch bracelets. Style without sacrificing comfort. Spidell. No one attaches more importance to your watch.
See the new His and Her Spidell Quartz watch collection, available exclusively at fine jewelers.
There's a better way to find a better job.
Honey, look at this.
The National Business Employment Weekly.
It's published by the Wall Street Journal. It lists hundreds of high-paying jobs all across the country.
What am I doing with all of these, now that I have the National Business Employment Weekly?
Pick up the National Business Employment Weekly at a newsstand or call 800-TDC-8343 to receive 8 issues by first-class mail for only $35. 800-TDC-8343.
How smart a shopper are you? Beyond. How do you know which TV to buy, which microwave, which refrigerator, when you're faced with all the different models and different prices?
I find this very confusing to shop.
Very frustrating. Confusing.
I know nothing about stereos that I'm supposed to buy today.
Cut through the confusion before you go shopping. Call this toll-free number for Consumer Reports 1987 Buying Guide issue. It's yours free with your paid subscription to Consumer Reports, the magazine smart consumers turn to, whether they're shopping for a new car or a new phone.
I wish I'd have had this before I bought one of my other phones, because I wouldn't have bought it.
Call to get 12 monthly issues, including our latest product reports and the year-end buying guide issue when published, plus the 1987 buying guide issue and the medicine show, free with your paid subscription, all for just $18.
It's one of the very few objective sources of information you can get.
Call 1-800-832-8343. The Discovery Channel takes you to a different part of the world every week. This Saturday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 Pacific, QED looks at how China combines old and new methods of healing to treat the most populous nation in the world on the People's Medicine. Then, at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific, the series China in Change begins. Each episode examines a different aspect of Chinese culture, from the structure of the family to the tradition behind their love of music and dance. Share in the traditions of different cultures on the Discovery Channel.
Tonight on the Discovery Channel, explore the controversy surrounding the Pacific outdoors at 8:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific. Then, royal families, past and present, are highlighted at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. North American Indian Portraits highlights the history and culture of Native Americans at 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific. And marvel at the animals of the Great Northwest at 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific. All tonight, starting at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on the Discovery Channel.